welcome to the spookiest episode of Force for Thought we've ever aired. I'm Luke.
And I'm Max.
And I'm Matt.
Fuck, I did it like the ending again. I always want to be the last one to do it. Well, you can splice those
That
together.
is spooky. Yeah, I can.
We'll fix it in post. Matt's favorite thing to hear.
Hello and welcome to Force for Thought. Today we are celebrating Halloween, even though it was yesterday. So we are celebrating Dia de los Muertos more realistically. But we are here to talk about the spookiest and scariest moments in Star Wars.
Yes.
We have compiled our favorite moments, and we're just going to get right into it. Max, what would you say is one of your favorite spooky moments in Star Wars?
Well, first off, can I get some clarification? Because I did not know the difference between spooky
Yes,
and
we-
scary.
Yeah, Matt, why don't you go ahead and give the clarification, because he seems to be the God Emperor expert on what the difference between spooky and scary is, because let's preface this. Matt made a movie, start to finish, filmed, edited, directed, wrote, and he told me when I was coming to the premiere, it's not scary, it's just kind of spooky, because I don't like scary movies. It is literally about 4 kids that go to the woods to find a murderer and then they get chased by a murderer. It is the most stereotypical scary movie I could ever imagine. Jump scares. I was thoroughly scared the whole time. So if you don't think that is scary, Matthew, what is scary?
Well, A, that makes my heart very warm that you think it's scary. I'm glad you liked it and it was effective. But as I feel like I'm the resident spooky guy, I'm currently wearing a shirt that says Future Ghost on it. I tend to wear all black. Halloween is my favorite holiday. I don't know. I think overall spooky is a vibe, right? Hocus Pocus, the movie, is spooky. It's not scary in any means. It can be a little scary from time to time, right? But like, I think that is a spooky vibe, right? You're thinking orange lights, you're thinking witches, you're thinking cold fall nights. Scary, I think, is you're being chased by somebody, right? Your heart is pumping Halloween, haunted house vibe.
So is it the pressure of danger, you think?
Pressure of danger might be a great way to describe that, yeah. But it is odd when you're ranking things or saying things with other people, I guess, too. But like, man, I want to give examples in Star Wars, but I feel like these are going to be our
Well, yeah,
our
we're about
answers,
to give a bunch of examples.
so I don't want to.
I think
we
I
can
came
talk
up.
about it on a case-by-case basis. Max, hit us
Yeah.
with one of your
What am I-
spooky, scary moments.
Which one you want, spooky or scary?
Did you separate them? 'Cause
I did.
All right, let's
Trick
go.
or treat, you know what I'm saying?
But
Let's rip
I
a
guess-
spooky one.
I guess it doesn't matter because I think I had the exact opposite thinking Matt did. Because to me, I had spooky as being more like a jump scare. And I had
Interesting.
scary as being more of like a mental, like drawn out, like, oh man, this is kind of a scary situation, huh? So
That is very interesting. I feel like even the words you chose, you should replace scary with spooky. Situations are spooky.
You know?
Events are scary.
Correct,
This
yeah.
is what makes me
Like
so
Matt wears black
unpredictable.
every day. That's kind of spooky. I'm not ever scared by Matt.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
What do you mean interesting? Explain yourself.
I'm sticking
Are
to
you
my
scared
guns.
by Matt?
No.
You've lived with him for years. What have you seen?
If only you've seen the things I've seen.
Oh, if you've only seen the same things I've seen.
You wish Max would wear black.
All right. I'm gonna hit you with scary. Let's go scary first.
Yes.
Because it's more of a personal scary thing.
Ooh.
And on screen, it doesn't jump out at you as like, whoa, this is terrifying. But when you really think about it, in
So
The
it's
Phantom
spooky.
Menace, Episode 1, when Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Jar Jar are fleeing from Portagunga, that's not what it's called, Altagunga, through the planet core, and they're underwater, and there's all these giant monsters that are attacking them, and then a giant fish comes and eats that fish, and a bigger fish comes.
Yes.
That is absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
Personally, I am terrified of like things underwater that
Same.
shouldn't be there. I'm pretty sure that's called submechanophobia because I subscribe to it on Reddit. But it's really scary, and the idea of like me being in there, I would be freaking out the entire time.
Yeah.
And last week on this show, I gave a Force for Thought where I talked about a very important scene in one of the Star Wars movies that's unfortunately been turned into a meme. And the same is true for this scene too, right? Because everyone knows Qui-Gon's line. There's always a bigger fish.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
There's always a bigger fish.
Yes,
First off,
indeed.
this is Naboo is like one of the most like colonized, civilized planets we've ever seen. This is not like a monster planet where like all these monsters just roam. People live there. They swim in those waters. And
Yes.
you're telling me there's always a bigger fish in there? And I know people are thinking like, well, they were traveling through the planet core. I'm sure that's far away
Yeah.
from where people were swimming. But if you look at it, there's a lot of light where they were. If the sunlight could penetrate that far down to
Yes.
give that much light on those creatures, they were not that deep.
No.
People could definitely be in that area. And to me, That is terrifying.
Yeah.
So I say that's scary.
The
That is
Jar Jar
scary.
line, he's obviously such a comedic character, but when he says, monsters out there leaking in here, all sinking and no power, when you sa thinking we sa in trouble.
Did you have the same thing in yours?
No, I just pulled that up. Because
Okay. I'm like, you're looking at notes right now.
How are you quoting verbatim?
That's a very funny quote, but like if he just said that in a regular voice and didn't do like the whatever Gungan talk, that's a terrible line. Like, yeah, we're sinking, no power, monsters out there, we're leaking. This is the worst situation imaginable.
Yeah, you can do like an entire 90-minute horror movie just in that one scene there, just like slowly dying. That'd be horrible.
So, for the record, I would classify that as a scary moment.
I agree.
All right, I had it as scary.
Good.
That is indeed very scary.
Matt, you want to hit us with one?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a split the difference. I think it is scary and spooky. It is everything on Exegol.
Yeah.
It is.
I had that on mine. I had that as spooky.
I would classify it as scary just because it's so spooky.
I know, but that's the thing. It's weirdly both. I think it's. I
think scary
it's a
is
fine, it's a fine line.
Spooky has to evolve into scary.
And I think it does. And that's the thing, is that the whole vibe of the entire thing is spooky. The dark shadows, all of the Sith watching, the Colosseum. But then you also do have moments of being very scared when you're walking through all like the test subject things. And it's like you don't know. I'm sure there's needles, and I'm sure there's other things. Like there are so many little spooky moments within there that you feel like there's going to be a jump scare. Even Palpatine himself, I wish he was a little. You could see him a little more, but when there's lightning flashing and you see his hands, you see his eyes, everything about that is spooky.
Yeah, I can even pinpoint the exact moment it takes me from being spooked to being scared because
Lay it down.
Kylo Ren arrives on Exegol and it looks spooky at that point. It's like dark landscape, the lone building on that desert, and it's dark and lightning, and I'm like, oh, this is spooky. And then he takes that elevator down and you see those Sith statues and it's very spooky. And then Palpatine says, "At last."
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, this is scary.
Yeah.
Yes, I was about to point out the audio of that scene as well too, because I don't know if it's sound effects or music or the combination of them, but like the shrieking that's going on, like the sound that the lightning makes is terrifying.
It's loud.
And, we could talk a lot about J.J. Abrams as a director because he very much likes to kind of tease people and like not provide a whole lot of answers.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to show things. So I'm glad that we got to see as much Palpatine as we did. But I feel like JJ is right in that kind of like horror context where not seeing it is almost spookier. Like when you just barely see the glimpses in the light of the lightning coming through, it is really terrifying.
I also wish I know this is a contradiction of what you just said, and I agree with you, but I do wish we almost saw more of the spookiness. And so I don't want them to go too far, I guess, but like I could have used a little bit more.
It was
good.
Because if you see it too much, it does start to take away from it.
Yeah.
I think it was
so
the
good,
perfect
though.
amount also. It makes it so easy to get that scary vibe when they do like the lightning flashes on Palpatine's face. Like I was trying to think of an example just now of like literally anything you could put in that scene and it would be scary just because of the lightning. Like you could put a picture of me and I would be scared. Or like just a fruit. And it's like just the way it's shot and the way the lightning flashes and the lighting, it's scary.
Not even Palpatine. I just mean the area around it. Like I would wish we would almost have seen more of that area. It's
the
so
Exegol
cool.
cultists
Yeah.
and all the lore that
So
they've
spooky.
been building the Star Destroyers.
Yeah.
And
Even the architecture and then the Knights of Ren.
The
feels like
throne and
haunted.
just how it's like
Yeah.
jagged and pointy and
So spooky. Anyway.
all right, moving right along, I had a
spooky.
I also have a spooky moment from also the Phantom Menace. I thought you were taking it because it's also when they're going to Autogunga, not away from it. Is why I had that name so fresh on my mind. When Jar Jar, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon are swimming to Autogunga, I think that scene is spooky because it's just some people swimming through water, which is not inherently spooky, but the music in that scene is very spooky. And then they well, it's not a mountaintop, but the equivalent of cresting a mountain but underwater, and Autogunga is revealed and the vocals come out a little louder, and the music to that scene is very spooky, which I guess is more of a spooky song than a spooky scene, but it makes the whole scene spooky.
Yeah, the music. I think it's supposed to be wondrous, but I know what you mean that it does.
It is supposed to be wondrous. Maybe it's because I just saw it as a child and
No, same though. and I agree. I know exactly what you mean.
But it from the surface, it looks like a normal pond, and then they jump in it, and then there's an entire city down there.
Also
there's something
scary.
down there that isn't supposed to be. And going back again, I understand that's like a personal thing. That's a me thing that I have to deal with. But that terrifies terrifies me. I remember being a kid and going to Pearl Harbor and standing over the USS Arizona and just being like, there is an entire ship underneath me right now, and being like terrified. Like my heart was racing in that moment, just like all the stuff beneath me. I would not want to go in that lake if I just knew there was an entire populated city at the bottom of it. That terrifies me.
I agree. It's like the same thought of like you said, just like walking above something and being like, there's so many things below me right now. Like the idea of like abandoned houses freak me out. Just the fact that there's like, why are chairs in an abandoned place scary?
Mm-hmm, they are.
I don't know. It's just like, because it's like the thought of like what was there or what could be there. Have you guys heard about the abandoned town in Whitehall?
Yeah, they just demolished it.
Did they?
Recently, yeah.
Whoa, did not know that. It's crazy. There was like 8 blocks of houses just
there's a disc golf
abandoned.
course that I've played right near it, and I played it before they demolished the neighborhood, and yeah, it was spooky for sure.
I don't know why I keep harping on this. I guess I'm just trying to validate my own feelings now.
No,
but
I
take
get it.
the example of a chair, for example.
Yeah.
If you just have a chair like next to a pool, like okay, you don't think anything of it. Like that's just a chair. Someone's going to sit there and relax. But if you take that exact same chair and just put it at the bottom of that pool and you just look at it, like that's freaky.
I agree.
Why is there a chair down there?
1,000%. Because it's the intention, right? It's the intention of why. And why do I not know about it? That's not normal.
It's yeah. I don't know.
I'm
It's
glad
a lot
Matt
of things.
shares these feelings because
you not?
You're not with me at all?
I'm not really scared of underwater like you are. We swim together every now and again. I'm gonna be a little bit more graceful with you when you start getting a little shakes.
No, I like in a pool is totally fine, but if we're like in a lake and someone was like, "Oh, hey, I think there's something down here," I'm like, "Oh, I don't know what it is." That freaks me out.
Have you seen where I believe is where Friday the 13th was filmed? There's a statue of Jason Voorhees chained to the bottom.
Yes, that would terrify me.
That's creepy.
It's very Jason Lives.
This is also why the underwater level is my least favorite level in every video game ever.
Makes sense. So you're taking air over water. Like if you had to be high up in the sky versus submerged below.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me too. I don't like either, but Luke, what would you take?
I'd rather be high up in the air.
Yeah.
If I had to do like one like Daredevil-ish type thing, and they were like, you can either go skydiving or scuba diving.
That doesn't help. You already went skydiving.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And scuba
I've never been scuba diving.
That's like saying, hey, do you want to do something you hate or something you really liked before? That's a bad example,
I didn't
Maxwell.
think scuba diving was like an adrenaline junkie thing, though. I think that's like a recreational thing.
Deep sea scuba diving?
Yeah, deep sea
Maybe
scuba
deep
diving.
sea. I don't know.
Just add a couple words.
Are you thinking
I'm
snorkeling? There's a
Max,
difference
like,
between scuba
snorkeling.
diving and
Yeah.
snorkeling.
Max like puts his head all the way under when snorkeling and comes back up.
That
No,
was terrifying.
no, that's fine. But like scuba
couldn't
diving,
see the sun.
if I was underwater for like minutes at a time, like examining like oh, there's like a cool sunken ship here that we can go investigate, I'd be like, no, absolutely not. I'd rather
that's
jump out of
fair.
a plane.
Now, I don't want to get off Star Wars too much, but I also do want to talk about like our top a couple fears, because I feel like exploring Maxwell's
This
is very interesting.
This is my second biggest one. My actual biggest one is snakes.
Yes. Okay. You know what? Let's go back to Star Wars, and then I can tell my biggest fears, and go back to Star Wars, and then Luke, you can tell yours. Like more fun things, stupid ones. But yeah, they always are snakes, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Any stem from that?
I have no idea. Maybe
They're just kind of spooky.
yeah.
The thing that
they're
pisses me
scary.
off to no end, Maxwell. Is
No,
you
I think
don't
they're
love,
spooky because if I saw one, I would jump. That's spooky.
That's
No,
scary.
that's scary.
That's scary. Yes, Luke. Correct.
Yeah.
I really think you're wrong.
All right,
It's
getting back to
scary-
Star
Max,
Wars. Max,
it's-
give us another spooky, scary moment that you have.
Okay,
from a
well,
galaxy
building
far,
off
far
of
away.
this, I would go with that giant serpent in The Rise of Skywalker.
Yep. Oh, I
The
1,000%.
sand serpent.
Oh, I didn't think about him. He's spooky.
Man.
I
I could instantly
okay,
feed
yeah,
into
I'd
my
go
fears
spooky.
right now because it's a perfect segue, but I won't. I'll hold off for a little bit.
Were you going to talk about the snake from Chamber of Secrets?
No, I wasn't going to talk about the serpent from Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, okay.
But yes, also that freaks me out, especially when you're on the Harry Potter ride, the Forbidden Journey.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah.
That does freak me, and it pisses me off to no end that you don't love Indiana Jones because you guys are both fear snakes.
Indiana Jones and I do share a lot of qualities.
You're cunning.
Sure.
You're handsome.
You
You love leather.
you love leather. Interpret that how you will. I really love/hate the behind the scenes of Indiana Jones when they're doing that snake scene.
Mhm.
I should say Raiders of the Lost Ark when they're doing that snake scene because like
you.
all those snakes are there and they're real, but he was like surrounded by glass basically, right? And like even
Still
that
scary.
would terrify me.
Yeah,
If they were like,
same.
"Oh, don't worry, there's like a glass box we're gonna put you in or something," and they're just gonna be like around you, I'd be like, "No, absolutely
Yeah,
not."
how do I get out of here, though?
Yeah, there's the whole logistical thing too with filming on set. But anyway,
Yes.
so there's another scary moment. I actually did not have that written down, but since Matt stole Exegol, I will add that one to the conversation. Snakes and water.
That is definitely a spooky moment. Also, the implications of that serpent being under the black sand that ate, or assumedly, or killed Ochi of Bestoon. He's become a pretty recurring and not main character, but we're getting a lot of detail about Ochi of Bestoon in the comics and books, and it's sad to think he gets such an uneventful death where he just falls down the sand and gets eaten by this serpent, but that's almost like worse about how menacing this serpent is.
Maybe he
Fett,
doesn't.
though, yeah.
Maybe he takes a coward's way out.
All right, Matt, give us another spooky, scary moment from Star Wars.
So I feel like there are so many that I want to touch on, but I think the one that actually legitimately freaked me out, the first time I saw this, I was sick, and it's the Undead Night Sisters.
Sorry, sick or six?
Sick. When I was
Unwell.
6, this was not out yet.
Okay.
The Undead Night Sisters, though, that whole storyline.
In Rebels or Clone War? In Clone Wars?
Yes.
Okay.
Legitimately freaks me out. It is so scary. The whole storyline. It's like a 4-arc episode story arc, right? I'm saying story arc like 3 times in a row, but it legitimately is so freaky. I absolutely loved it because that's the first time, like, again, as someone who likes spooky stuff and Star Wars, I never really thought those were going to be fully combined, besides those little moments like in Phantom. Or the other ones we'll probably talk about. But to see this, like, this dark sky, these, like, slime green colors coming out of, like, cauldrons and stuff, and it is so scary. And the rush to have our characters escape that area, too, is so freaky. I don't know. It's 10 times over every time the Night Sisters are on screen, which is why when in Ahsoka they came on, it is so spooky to see them all the time. I mean, eventually I think we'll even get more scary stuff live action.
Going to Dathomir.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's why I'm like actually spooked to see that coming up.
We've talked before about how I imagine George Lucas coming up with the accent for Kit Fisto, that he's looks like he has fish dreadlocks, so they made him a Jamaican accent. Yeah. I like to think George Lucas was in a storyboard idea meeting for the Clone Wars, and they're like, what if we did like a Halloween episode and we had like witches and magic and necromancers? And George Lucas is just vigorously writing all this, like, yeah, and we made it like real spooky, like a Halloween themed episode, and yeah, more.
That's exactly how I felt when watching it. I was like, yes.
But it all works still.
It does.
I included something similar, the Night Sisters in Jedi Fallen Order, but just because you traverse Dathomir so much also, and that is a very spooky section of the game because it's like dark and misty, and every now and again little zombie Zabraks jump out at you, and it's definitely towing the line between spooky and scary for me.
Yeah,
I agree. Dathomir, anything involving Dathomir is just ripe for that kind of content. They have like those little, in the game, they're like in these cocoons, and like you see them, and sometimes they come out at you, and sometimes they don't. Yeah, it's spooky.
It is indeed.
For my next spooky moment, not quite scary, I went with the Force Vision on Dagobah for Luke Skywalker.
Absolutely.
That makes sense for you, yeah.
Definitely gave me the spooks.
Also was in my list, too.
For me.
We've talked about this before.
Oh, yeah, we have.
Yeah, and then I said it was from Return of the Jedi.
Well, now you're reliving that shame, so cut it.
How the hell could you think that, Matthew?
But it's very spooky, just the way it's shot with the fog and the... I first saw it...
And the snakes?
Yeah,
there's snakes in that scene.
Yeah, that's scary.
He's going into the cavern and he like moves one just like casually. I always think about that.
Did you guys know that the helmet, that Mark Hamill wasn't satisfied with the head mold? Sorry, no one's going to stop me.
So he laid down underneath and then put his head up through the floor?
I was like, no one's going to stop me and joke yet? All right.
I did know that. But
I know we've talked about this.
The way it's shot,
I was going to let it go because I still feel like that's a fun enough fact that you can say it on pod. I'm sure there's listeners who don't know that.
We've said this on pod like 3 times, though.
Oh, boy. We have started recycling way too much of our content.
Because last time it was with Sway, and we were
like, we told her.
Yes. And she's like, no, continue, because I don't know it. And we were just like, it's the same thing when...
We sounded so bored saying it.
Yeah, when you, like, hit the helmet and Lord of the Rings
Viggo Mortensen kicks the helmet. Did you know that he actually broke his toe and that scream is real?
You did the exact same... Max, I'm going to play it back the same exact way you said it.
So, good. Sometimes I wish it was the summer of 2023 again, so I can relive that moment now. But no, the way the VFX have that duel between Luke and Vader in that Force vision, I don't even know how to describe it, but it looks spooky. It looks like a fever dream, and it's slow and hazy. But
I think it's because it's like slowed down, and that is also terrifying. Because when you're having a nightmare, you like can't run. Like everything is slow, and you can't escape, and it has that feeling to it.
Is that
in
what
that
it's
scene.
eliciting in me? That makes so much sense. I never really put that together.
He like can't move fast enough. He can't get out of there.
But he still wins the fight though, so it's not that similar.
But he realizes that
I always lose whenever someone's chasing me and my feet turn to stone.
Hmm.
All right, Max, what's your next spooky, scary moment that you wanted to talk about?
Well, before we get too far from Dathomir, I'll just add my my second spooky. I just have Darth Maul. Just him. In general, he is a terrifying person to look at. I know behind the scenes when they were designing Darth Maul, George Lucas went to the designer and he was like, just draw me like the scariest person from your nightmares. And they came back with like this just absolutely terrifying like monster of a person that kind of looks like Darth Maul. And then George Lucas looked at it and he went, give me the second scariest monster like you could see in your nightmares. And then that was Darth Maul. And yeah, I mean, when you first see Darth Maul, I should say when you see him for the first time, when in the Phantom Menace, when the doors open up and he removes his hood and you can like kind of finally see him in his glory, he's standing there like in broad daylight, basically, right? Like they didn't do anything to try to make it scarier.
Yeah.
He was just himself, and that was enough to be terrifying. He's got those red and yellow eyes, the horns, his creepy smile, and then just like the way he carries himself, everything about him, the way he sounds, like his voice.
Yep, absolutely. Everything about him is freaky. It's like him as a character. I also have Maul. I'm sure we all do. Like the return of Maul is freaky when he's got his spider legs and he's crawling across the fire. Something that's underrated when he's freaky is when he's with Ezra. He's pretending to be like an old man. Like that is the equivalent of something being underwater. It's just like that person pretending to be something they're not.
That's a great example of the audience knowing something about a character that the other characters in the scene don't.
And it is insanely scary because you're just like, oh, like you know that voice, you obviously know who he is, but man, it is such a good reveal, and I feel like everything about Darth Maul is scary because he's very capable, obviously. Then you give him spider legs, and it's like 3 times scarier.
Yeah. And it's because he's supposed to be like a tortured character, right? Like I think it was, I don't know if it was Sam Witwer or what was his name? The
Freddie
guy who plays Kanan. Freddie Prinze Jr., who talks about him.
About how he's Sisyphus? We talked about this before, Max. Yes. I thought you were going to stop him, Max.
Sorry, I did not. I was deleting these off my list so I have a more...
We've talked about that before. But I will say also about Darth Maul, in The Phantom Menace, he has like very famously just the one line where he says, "At last we'll reveal ourselves to the Jedi," and he says it very, quietly. He doesn't have like that cool of a voice, but then in animation, Sam Witwer gives him a very sinister and iconic voice, and it's just such a cool way for them to take a character that's already very famous for being just cool looking and make him also just cool sounding.
Yeah.
They could have just kept the same voice from The Phantom Menace, but I'm glad they hammed it up for animation.
Same.
I'm glad that it was Sam Witwer. I'm a big Sam Witwer fan.
He is good.
Matt, you want to keep us going?
Yep, let's keep it going with 2 fears of mine plus a Star Wars one. Quick fear, because it's a Halloween episode. As I'm sure you both know, but I hate animatronics, specifically larger-than-life animatronics.
Okay.
Why?
I have a couple ideas of where this could go.
Why are you always so gun-ho on including practical effects? I feel like we should cut now to our CGI versus practical effects episode, and you're talking about how we need more practical effects.
We do, because that actually scares me. I'm not scared by CG anything, but it's like, man, I think about if I was locked in a dark room with a animatronic T-Rex or the shark from Jaws, I would not like that at all. Those are legitimately freaky. That's why I will never go on the Jurassic Park River Adventure at Universal. The Jaws ride, when it was in its existence, scared the living daylights out of me. Would not go out at nighttime when you're stuck in the boathouse. It is not fun. I mean, it is fun, but my God.
I'm also thinking
animatronics
there's
scare me.
Like an interesting timeline of the overlap of animatronic technology with CG technology, that animatronic technology wasn't that good by the time they started being able to do CG technology. So I'm picturing like a dilapidated Chuck E. Cheese turning its head towards you as being your biggest fear.
I think that's exactly the type of stuff that you're terrified of, though, isn't it?
Like Five Nights at Freddy's. No, I think it like it has to be larger than life a little bit. I think like the giant crocodile from Lake Placid, the shark from Jaws, which hangs in the Academy Museum out in Los Angeles, which is kind of across the street from where I work when I go out there, and it's the actual shark from Jaws, Bruce the shark, is they reconstructed it and hung it from the ceiling, so you face it as you're going down the escalator. And I felt like when I did that, it faced my fears, and I don't really want to do it again.
You didn't heal your trauma?
It did not, no.
I like knowing this about you because for some reason it's actually come up a lot in our friendship. And I think it's so fun. Like, because I feel like, not to just validate myself, but I feel like snakes is a very rational fear, whereas I feel like animatronics is a very irrational fear.
Yeah, it is.
And I think that's really fun.
Well, have I ever told you why I'm afraid of animatronics? Not to derail too hard. In South Park Mall up in Cleveland, they, in the late 90s, mid 90s, they had big dinosaur, in the 90s, everyone loved dinosaurs. Jurassic Park was all the rage. And so they had these animatronic dinosaurs, this huge exhibit there. And every hour, I think, the T-Rex would like move, bend its head, and do the famous roar from Jurassic Park. It's one of the scariest sounds of all time. I don't know what forced my dad to do this, but the T-Rex did the thing. It lowered down. And I remember opening my eyes and being face to face with a T-Rex, and it did the roar.
He was just holding you up like baby Simba style to its face.
Yeah, exactly like that. And that is the spawn of that.
How old were you?
I had to have been 4 or 5.
Young.
That is a reasonable lifelong fear from a childhood trauma.
Yeah, scary.
Luke and I have a nephew who's 4 or 5 years old, and I feel like if we did that to him, that would definitely be a lifelong fear of his.
Yes.
Oh my god. Yeah, I can't even imagine doing that to a 4 or 5 year. I don't want to shit on your dad because I think he listens to the podcast. He's also like 350 pounds of pure muscle, and it could absolutely eat me. But what a dick.
He does not listen to this podcast, I don't think. I think he also fell off like with my grandparents. Not with my grandparents, like my grandparents were like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Oh, fell off the podcast.
He listened to the first episodes to support you, and then we just kept talking about Star Wars.
We're like, anyway, Dathomir. I'm out.
So do you guys talk about anything else? No.
No,
nope, this is it.
Anyway, more Star Warsy.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
What was your second fear? You said you were going to give 2 fears.
I was going to go Star Wars and then the second fear.
Tell me, is it related to the one Star Wars that you have?
No, I have nothing related.
Oh, okay, never mind then. I was going to say, tell me your 2 fears. I was going to try to guess what it was.
Well, we guess my other fear then, I guess.
Your other fear?
Yeah, what do you think it is? You know what it is.
I was going to guess an animatronic from Star Wars that I thought you were going to say.
Well, let's go off the animatronic vibe. It's not an animatronic, but it's a puppet. But the Rancor. The Rancor.
That's what I thought you were going to say. That's not an animatronic?
No, it's a puppet. It's like a miniature puppet.
A miniature puppet?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a small boy.
I thought they had like a full-sized head and stuff.
They had
For
a claw
Boba Fett
that
and
picked
stuff.
up Luke.
Yeah.
That was...
But like when he goes to like jam the bone in his mouth and stuff, they didn't have like a full-size animatronic for that?
I don't think it was, no.
How could
Maybe
they have
it
done that
is.
though? That must have been. They couldn't.
I guess maybe
mesh
they did.
that with a puppet.
Well, either way, they had it for Boba Fett, so that does freak me
Yeah,
out.
we saw that at
It is
Celebration.
freaky.
It was
Yeah.
really cool.
I would not like to see that either. That is true. The Rancor freaks me out to no end. And I know I've said this in the 40th anniversary of Return, but seeing it on the big screen is actually scary. Like, I'm not afraid of that scene when I watch it. Like, being in that moment would freak me out, but my God, it was actually scary in theaters.
When we were in Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, they had it on display because it was like right after Book of Boba Fett and everything. And it was kind of freaky. If you saw it, you would be freaked out. But luckily, right next to it, they had a realistic wax statue of Danny Trejo. So I feel like that kind of took you right out of it a little bit. Much like the show Book of Boba Fett when you're like, oh, a Rancor. Is that Danny Trejo?
That's true. And my other fear, before moving on, is hotel beds. I do not like hotel beds one bit.
Scared of bed bugs?
Actually, but that's not why. That came much later. I just have never liked hotel beds. Like, I don't know. It's just uncomfortable. I hate the sheets. I hate thinking about people sleeping in those sheets. I hate how they're so white so you can see any little stain. Man,
I think this is also a rather irrational fear.
I have to back him up on this one though because I have OCD. So yeah, that kind of grosses me out too.
Look, forever when I was a kid, I would bring my own blanket and stuff and pillow. Like, it just grosses me out. Like, it could be, man, it's like I've stayed at some really nice hotels, like, and those are nice. I mean, it's a lot easier to do, like, when you're just, like, you and your wife are going somewhere versus, like, your entire family and you're, like, a teenager. And, like, we never stayed anywhere, like, we've always stayed at nice places, but, like, something about it was just like, man, do not feel comfortable. Like, I feel like I sleep in the same spot the entire time.
We've talked before about how we sometimes try to think and express ourselves in memes, and I don't remember if I've made this joke on the podcast before. If I have, cut it. But frequently whenever people talk about stuff like this, I think the Breaking Bad meme where he says, "Who do you think you are?" No, I am not in danger. I am the danger. And that's how I feel about hotel
You're the
beds.
person sleeping in the sheets that Matt and I can't stop thinking about.
I am the dirtiest one that has slept in that bed.
Oh.
What if someone like Luke slept in this hotel room?
Anyway, sorry. I feel like I can go on, but yeah, do not like hotel beds.
I would love to try to find a way to relate that to a Star Wars moment.
Did you ever sleep in a hotel or something like it?
There's something much worse. I'd rather do that, to be honest. Give me a ship any day of the week.
All right, moving along. My greatest real life fear is death, and
do something fun though.
Rather not get into it too much on the air, I guess. But my next spooky scary moment is the carbon freezing chamber in Empire Strikes Back. All spook, no scare. It's not like an actually scary place. Like nothing jumps out at you
because you don't know if he's gonna live or die.
No,
it's the situation.
Not scary. It's the atmosphere is just kind of spooky.
Interesting.
We are going to get him to understand the difference between spooky and scary by the end of this.
Like atmosphere.
No,
is spooky.
I'm wondering what this has to do with death though, because no one dies in that scene.
It doesn't have to do with death. Matt wanted us to bring up our real world fears, and
so unrelated. Luke's biggest fear is death.
I didn't want to talk about it at all, but yes.
You don't have any irrational fears either.
Not that I can think of.
Think about it when we come back to you, but yes, I agree. The carbonite scene is scary. The lighting of it, the fog, the smoke, the fact that Darth Vader is there and Boba Fett, yes.
Yeah,
these
and
masked people versus unmasked people.
The way they've been building up that fight, where Yoda and Obi-Wan were like, "Don't go, you can't win. It's a trap.
Yep.
You're gonna ruin everything." And then he goes. And
correct.
He's so overpowered, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is just the worst."
This is just the worst.
All right, Max, what's your next one?
Oh, okay. Best for last. This is what I think is the scariest scene in all of Star Wars. It is from Rogue One at the very end, Darth Vader in the hallway.
Yep.
It is, you hear the ship creaking. It is dark. You hear the ominous breathing. The troopers turn around and you just see the red glow of the lightsaber ignite. And then he just very slowly, much like Jason in like any of his movies, right? Like you never see him run. He's just always walking, but he always kills his prey somehow. Like he still gets to you. They can't escape. They're in that tiny hallway. It's claustrophobic, and he's just very slowly slaughtering them all one by one.
I agree that's the scariest moment in Star Wars.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I know I've talked to great length about this before, but not just even the hallway scene, but Darth Vader in general. You can't tell his emotion. You can't tell where his eyes are looking, and that back knowledge of seeing, that knowledge of seeing him in other movies, I think adds to that scene of being like, even if you were in that hallway, you have no idea if you were next or if he was looking at you or if he was going to come for you. Man, that is scary. Yeah,
and there's nothing you can do. I mean, they were shooting at him, knowing that there's nothing they can do, and he was just one by one killing them all in a very different but gruesome way.
Yep, It's horrid.
All right, Matt, do you have one last one?
I do have one last one. Besides Darth Vader, I literally have one last one, and it's like a very obvious one, but it's one of those situations that in the movie they are able to make funny, and I think it's great. But it's the trash compactor scene. I would hate to be in that moment when you're watching as a kid and those walls are coming in, and there's a monster in there. There's something under the water, Maxwell.
Yep.
Like it's a combination of like three things that none of us like: animatronics. Like the monster being underwater, and then walls coming towards you. No one wants
Death,
that. Death. Oh my god, it's all three of our.
That's a good example of the tone of a scene, making light of a very serious situation. Like that could be so much darker than it is. And like Han Solo says, one thing is for sure, we're all going to be a lot thinner. And it's like, ha, you're going to die.
Yeah. And also 3PO is hilarious. Oh my God, it's killing them.
Because they're all cheering.
It's so funny.
And I always laugh because that's another quote that I say in my everyday life that no one ever gets when Luke says, oh, where could he be?
I have heard you say that.
I say that a lot.
Yeah, you do.
Just like me saying, this is not gonna end the way you think it is.
Yeah.
Pop quiz that I think Luke might know the answer to. What is the name of that trash compactor creature?
I almost blurted it out and scrunched up my glasses like the Viggo Mortensen kicking the helmet. It's a Dianoga.
It is a Dianoga. Good job.
So my parents have, if they listen to this episode, will stop listening now. No, I'm just kidding. They're very supportive.
Dianoga?
That brings me to all of the ones that I had. I also had two more. I had the cantina scene in A New Hope, which is pretty spooky, a pretty big tonal shift in that movie.
Yeah.
Especially as a kid, it's like very lighthearted. Like, the content is like war and imminent death for a rebellion, but it's 2 wacky droids and you're following them around, and then you get to this cantina.
Werewolves.
There's a werewolf and all these spooky monsters. I really like the spook in that scene. And the last
aliens
one I had,
with peach faces playing instruments.
Peach faces.
The last one I had
They're
is
all your daughter.
from the comics, the High Republic comics, volume 1 from the 2020 series. The Drengir, the villain in that, they're kind of like plant vampire zombie monsters, which is kind of like a scary idea, but that volume is presented like you're reading a horror story. Like the way the art is drawn and the way the story unfolds, it's very scary. I would give that one a scary rating and not spooky because of the way it is handled. Similar to how the trash compactor scene is presented in a way that's not that scary for something that is. This is something that wouldn't be that scary, but is presented in a very scary way.
So you don't have any other irrational fears?
I forgot to even think. I'm sure I have something, but...
Well, while you think further, I'm surprised that nobody talked about the stormtroopers being resurrected in Ahsoka, or the first time you just see Thrawn's army. I feel like it's super creepy.
I honestly
and
can't
like the way
believe
they're chanting his name, and then Enoch tears, and he has like Enoch turns, and he has like that face, and it's, that I consider to be spooky.
I think that's
scary.
Maxwell.
I think it's spooky.
Max, you're getting them reversed.
I don't know. Let us know what you think in the comments. What is spooky and what is scary? Do you agree with me or are you wrong?
Luke and I are both like, no. Max, you got to get the thing.
It is remarkable that we are so consistently agreeing and disagreeing in the same format. All right. Does anyone have any force for thought?
I'm sure you do.
I do. If no one else does, let me pull it up. Sorry.
I probably could have went ahead and asked that, so you didn't have to tee yourself up.
That's fine. I have one from the Lego Terrifying Tales animated
Perfect.
short that I was watching to celebrate Halloween. It's just a funny joke that I have to give credit because I didn't come up with it, but it is an interesting force for thought. They say in a throwaway line, Darth Maul with his robot spider legs, does he take them off to sleep? Or does he just like hunch over and let them and keep them like under him, and he just like slumps down over them?
I would imagine that.
Anyway, is uncomfortable.
How tightly do those collapse? Like, can he like straighten them all out so he can just like sleep laying down?
I mean, if you're that Sithy, you got to be prepared for all moments. You're not gonna. It's like sleeping naked. It's like you can't.
Gotta be prepared.
Yeah, if someone breaks in, you gotta go for it, right?
Maybe he sleeps upside down like a bat.
That's spooky.
No, that's scary. If you walked in and you saw Darth Maul dangling from your ceiling with his spider legs, you'd be like, "Whoa, that's a little spooky."
It would be scary if I walked in and it would be scary if I walked in and he was doing that in my house. But if I watched a show and that's just the way he goes to sleep, I'd be like, "Ooh, that's kind of spooky."
Oh man,
interesting. What about Jabba the Hutt? How do you think he sleeps?
We saw him
He's
sleep.
always basically sleeping. What do you mean?
Oh yeah, we do see him sleep. He wakes up.
He's like, yeah, he sleeps like me.
Yeah, he just doesn't move. He just kind of closes his eyes. Okay. For some reason, I was picturing him straightening out.
Or if there's a hut that's a side sleeper and he rolls over.
Yeah.
Slash's Crumb is dead.
Right.
Can we call this episode the Spooktacular?
Yeah, that's
Force for Thought Spooktacular.
Spooktacular.
Yeah.
Man, we really should have. If we should came up with a name and then made it more spooky. We're talking ghost voice. I'm gonna insert a ghost voice there. The equivalent of audible cobwebs.
We're trying to keep that silent right there. Is that
trying to just to see?
Cob.
Man, we could have saw more Dracula.
Well, thank you very much for listening. Let us know what you think are your favorite spooky, scary moments in Star Wars. Let us know if you have a different definition of spooky and scary, and we'll see you next week.
See ya, zombie Sammy.